it's full of just to make sure.
Yeah.
East Hampton School Board, you are live.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to open?
I make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just ask that you remain standing for 1 minute for a moment of silence for John Diamond, past board member who just recently passed. Thank you.
So, exciting night tonight. Where do you want to start?
We are going to start with John Marshall and this unit.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody.
How are you?
Good.
Go ahead.
All right, so I'm actually proposing a small increase if we start on that summary page. And I thought maybe I would just go down the summary page and explain my rationale for each one of the codes. So there's a 0% increase under supervision. Under 2110 for regular education, you might remember that our former assistant superintendent for business had instructed us last year to make a 20% decrease in materials and supplies. And I'm asking for that to come back into the budget for the 22-23 school year. So that 12% increase is not a full 20% increase, but I'm asking to bring some of that material and supply money back into the budget for the building. Under reading, there is a 14% increase, and that's really because of our subscriptions, a lot of our digital subscriptions, they've just gone up. Our enrollment has gone up a little bit, and programs like Learning A to Z and RAS Kids, those subscriptions have just gone up. So that in conjunction with the number of students. No increase in our art budget. Music, I'm asking for a 36.34% increase. We never had a healthy cleaning budget, and we're feeling like this at the end of this year, we'd really like to have a thorough cleaning of all of our instruments, plus the increased enrollment. Our current fourth grade music program is quite robust. We have a lot of students in fourth grade music. Science, a little bit of an increase, $700 increase. No increase in our co-curricular. 5.6% increase in the elementary ed budget. That's really for reading interventions, and 0% increase in library. So overall, I'm asking for a 5.8% increase, and it's still about a little under $8,000 less than the 2021 budget. So it's still less than 2 years ago when we were asked to make those increases.
Can I just ask one question, which is it's a broad question that I have for you, for everyone? Because I looked at this and you said something that reminded me, and I made a note on all of the departments' budgets, which is like we have things like at the high school, you have the food services budget, the food classes and the food, and the middle school. And everyone's reading everything about inflation going way up, and yet we're flatlined on all of the material and budget costs for that. And I just wanted to ask about that with respect to your budget and inflation that we're seeing in the costs of buying materials, and whether or not we're confident that that's going to be enough.
Well, I think it's going to be a difficult year. The reality is that the budget last year, as I said before, it was depleted. And so we tried to bring the budget this year in balance to what probably was the prior year before. Obviously, what the situation that we are presently involved in the war that is, we don't know what's going to happen and how it's affecting the fuel will have an impact on the materials. So, but the budget at this point is balanced. And if the board decides that they want to increase anything, then we got to go to the 60%.
I'm asking that question because I've said this before in my years on the board, and I'll say it again, like, we're on this board, and I think my colleagues agree with me, we may not all agree on everything, but I mean, we're on the board here to provide education to the kids, not to say like, all right, we must keep this percentage that was an artifice created for political reasons.
Yes.
So my point is, if you have an artifice of 2% and you have inflation at 6%, and you have more kids in the district than you had, and you have COVID, I'm not gonna say buy the same number of consumables, or do this for less money. If they cost more, they cost more. I think we've been responsible in our budget. So I just want to go on record as saying that I don't want to be held to an artificial flatlined cap on materials when we have, a 4% inflation. Now, that said, there are also things within the budget that I see like, all right, like, maybe we don't need, 2,000 new colored folders this year, in the central office. So it's a fine dance, but I just want to throw that out to everybody and get a sense of that, because I saw that in every budget.
I think the unpredictability of what's going on in all the markets around is something that, principle wise and district wise, we're going to have to kind of, obviously repurpose some of the things. So listen, and we talked about this, we've talked about this before. So whereas there's a finite amount of money involved for home tutoring that's in our budgets, I do think there'll be a significant decrease in home tutoring expenses next year going forward due to the fact that, knock on wood, we're not in that same situation because that's how we really got through COVID and, thanks to our teachers stepping up, but that's a exorbitant expense, but we budgeted for that again. So we're prepared. So it's about repurposing what we have in the building budgets, to be honest, all three of the buildings and just being there, I know, are extremely tight, but within the department. So, if you need to repurpose, if there's something they want, we are usually able to. I know in Sarah's budget, there's areas that can be moved around a little bit. But to be honest, if costs go up, like we're seeing that with our building of our bus depot and whatnot, we're gonna have to really think out of the box a little bit with some of the things. I know I'm not gonna bring Tim's budget up anymore. I'm not allowed to get for the last meeting, but there's an inherent flexibility in some areas, and the bottom line is we might not be able to do certain things. We're looking at the fuel costs alone and transportation. I know Joe's not here, are gonna obviously go up.
And our heating bill is gonna go up. We stated for years.
Yes.
And you had that money to sort of what's left over there. But I agree with Jackie on the general principle that I don't want to cut, things that we need because we're trying to stay at a flat budget. And I think that, if Adam's saying, well, listen, we don't have to buy plexiglass this year because we already have it. And that came, when we're not here and we're on Zoom, we're not using materials or not as many. So you shift one and put it into another direction. I'm fine with that. But yeah, I think we all sort of, for the most part, share the same general.
Yeah.
The problem is this year
The other problem is that there's a lot of money in state aid being given to school districts this year, but not to us.
Nope.
We're getting 4%. State aid like we always get. We get it. Now you take a district like Brentwood, it's a big part of their budget, and if they're getting more in state aid, that really helps them. So it doesn't help us. I'm all for not trying to pierce the cap because I don't want to bring down our budget. But there's an unfairness this year because of inflation.
Well, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse going forward because if this year's tight, it's going to be worse.
Well, state aid, so the state's awash in money this year because of COVID, and obviously it could be a 1 or 2 time deal with that, and that's why the state aid schools are benefiting. The problem is we're obviously not a state aid school, but we're a tuition-based school. We do not now call Springs, Montauk, Amagansett, and up our tuition, so we're awash in money. That's not how we did it. We signed contracts. So you're absolutely right that we're not going to see the benefits some of these other districts who are seeing 30-40% increases in state aid. And that's,
And the budget this year for the first time in a lot of years is tight enough that, like when Isabel says it's balanced right now, what we have in front of us is a balanced budget. So anything that we want to add has to come from somewhere else because we're at
the point where if we raise it at all, we're piercing the cap.
Right,
So what we see here, for everything that we want to give, we have to take something from somewhere else across the district's budget.
I think that,
And we haven't been faced with that in a long time.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right.
East Hampton has been very lucky for many, many years, and the budget had been relatively easy to put together. Now you are at a point that starting the central office, going down to the last department of the district, people most likely will have to prioritize and ask, do we need this? If you don't need it, don't buy it. This has been the motto all along for me, but I know that, East Hampton has had always money in the budget. Now it's reality time, I think. So, because we have several items that, they are against. So when we started to put the budget, we did not have the issue with the fuel that is gonna.
Right.
That's
It's gonna have a huge impact,
really-
right?
Which is gonna
Okay.
drive our
Every item.
electric and everything else is gonna go up because there's gonna be surcharges and.
So then, of course, you are put in a position that the prior year was cut significantly.
Right.
Now you have all this is against you, and we're trying to balance everything.
Right.
Sorry.
so I've brought that back up a little bit.
Well, yeah.
And of course, as Isabel said, we recognize that if even within the building, should, my building budget be approved, and we would like other things, that we're gonna have to maneuver that within our own budget.
Well, and this might be the first year in a long time that we wind up having to go to fund balance if the fuel costs are that exorbitant and it throws our entire budget out. This might be the first time, I think, ever since I've been here. I mean, that's your emergency fund for this reason.
That's why we have it. We try not to use it, but that's why we have it.
Right.
No, and I think it's very important to know that for the community to know, like, our greatest resource here, obviously our children, but is our staff. And most of our budget is staff related, and we are not cutting programs.
Right.
We are not cutting staff. We are maintaining all of our great programs that we have and will be in full force next year. So that is a big piece. And I think, with this stuff, and I always looked at it from the perspective of, I wish I had that. But then I'm like, I could try to call November, maybe Isabel will give me that as a principal. But, when I look at it and I knew I had, I have my nine math teachers, all my programs are running. Everybody's going as you feel a sense that we're not cutting that important piece that the kids are seeing every day, which is the most important thing.
I'll ask a general question because we dealt with COVID for the last 2 years. And there were some extraordinary expenses that must have been incurred. They can now generally come out. God help us, we don't go back
No, well, actually,
to another variant.
East Hampton got $1.4 million for the COVID, and this $1.4 million has been used for home teaching, has been used for coverage in the classes. It has been extraordinary, the amount of teacher power, ladies and men power that has been needed in order to cover the children that they were at home and instruction had to be provided.
Yeah.
Then we provided any material needed for us to be in the buildings. So in the reality, yes, we have covered a lot of stuff, but we did get a lot of money from the state also. So the reality is that maybe because of that this year, we're gonna end up really, I don't think we're gonna have an amount of money like other years, but we might be able to zero out. I don't know, this next 3 months are gonna be crucial to see.
What do you mean by that, when you say the next 3 months are gonna be crucial?
Because what happens is that, at least in my experience, as we get closer to the end of the year, it's like a rush of expenses coming in.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it is very important that everything is encumbered, so at least the money is reserved. And even so, sometimes I'm seeing now already, Isabel, there's not enough money in this code. We need to increase it. I had to already liquidate $50,000 from the fuel in the high school in order to cover some, the emergency that we had in the
John Marshall.
in the elementary
Mhm.
with the fuel and all that. We are hoping that the insurance is gonna pay that, but they're taking the long time. And the vendor, rightfully so, he wants to get paid. So, there are things that they're coming that you don't know are gonna happen and you gotta cover them.
Now, do we have just solar here in the high school?
No, we have
Solar
the 3 buildings.
in the 3 buildings? So
Yeah.
does that help at all?
Yes, finally it is,
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Can you talk about that? a
But
little bit
ironically,
more?
that's gonna be offset by the fuel.
Yeah.
So the savings from the solar now are probably gonna just.
Got all worked out, correct?
Well, it's worked out and I just passed the torch to Sam that it needs to be followed up because they are not clear at this point whether we're getting the credit from PCNG and at the same time we're getting the energy from the solar panel into our
Great.
our grid or whatever is reserved. I think that we get the energy, but there is a credit from PSNG that they are owe us, and they are not clear. So I just got an email today, and the engineer is going to be following this. They are downloading the data for 24 months, and I mean, some will have to follow on that. But I have to tell you that the bills are coming in 40% less than what they were. So as a consequence of that, with permission of the superintendent, I caught the budget that I did put there $800,000. I left it down in $500,000. So I am hoping that the solar will be able to reserve a lot of energy that in that code, you're gonna have some money there.
But we don't know exactly
We don't
what,
know.
so you gotta be careful.
Right. Yeah, until we get a year or two under our belt, we don't know, we don't have a history.
Nice job.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Karen.
Anybody have questions about the vote? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
And when
Karen,
you're done, you
you
can
can
go.
go.
Okay.
Karen, we no longer like to look at pencil numbers anymore.
Okay.
So we're not gonna review the pencil.
Oh, okay.
We did that for like 6 years.
You'll never see that again.
No, it's fine to put it in there, I just meant you don't have to explain it.
Okay.
That's what I meant. Thank you. It was a very clear budget.
Thank you. So middle school?
Dr. Soriano.
Yes, sir. Nice to see everyone's faces.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Christina,
Yeah.
I've never seen you without a mask
I
since you came on the board.
Yeah.
Weird. Okay, so usually I have more to say that's perhaps interesting about my budget, but it's flat. I'm coming in with a zero, this is a tiny 0.02% increase for next year. There wasn't a need for us to increase anywhere, so we're not going to do it if we don't need it. But I want to point out, though, because this is really important, especially with the transition from Isabel to Sam, that $3,900 for BOCES Owls has to be somewhere in the district budget. If we don't have that, we won't be able to fund our environmental program in science. So
Is that,
No.
I always put it at the bottom, but it's not in
It's
our
already
budget.
coded and ready to go. This is in the,
Awesome.
in the 21,
Oh, I see.
23, the science, the BOCES code, you have the money available.
Okay. And then are we going to talk about, because I had sent Keith a memo and then you a memo about
Yes.
those exceptions?
Yes, with the exceptions, which at this point, they're not gonna be able to go into the budget
Okay.
unless you wanna repurpose some of the funds within your budget.
What do you mean by exceptions?
So we typically in years past, we come to you with
Supplemental
for budget
It's coming around.
supplemental items that are outside of our normal budget.
the wish list, right?
Yeah, exactly. The wish list.
If we have the money,
Mhm.
right.
So is that it? Because I don't think
Yep.
it was,
Yeah, I
Oh.
have it
it
here.
looks different than the one that I have.
Well, because I just put the numbers
We
in.
cut half of it.
Aha, got it.
I just made it, so they can see it easily. Usually this, Charlie, every year we are able, but this year, really, it's I mean, it is not my decision, it's a decision of the board. If they want to go above 2%, you know what I mean?
Well, I think let's hold on to
Yeah,
this because
we're all
there are
done.
other budgets that we
Yep.
still have to review
Yep.
that sometimes have a little bit more, if it means like,
Yeah.
one less bus in the rotation, if that's not
Right.
needed, things like that. There are some big
Maybe we'll
ticket
find
items in
somewhere.
some other,
I didn't want to
budgets.
say, because we
The
bring it up,
floor
we beat
polish,
that to death.
That's so funny you brought that
So,
up.
let's reevaluate when we get to the end. But do you want to explain to us any of the items on the wish list or?
We're all pretty-
Yeah, you know what, I can give you the backup so you have it. It just explains each one like in the past about what, a little blurb about what it is. and
Right.
This way you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
And
that's
we want that.
helpful.
Yes.
We want that. Honestly, we
Well,
want to
because
know.
when you're evaluating the floor scrubber.
Right, exactly.
Or,
wanna just-
Right.
Right,
And at some point, we have to buy, but,
right.
maybe not.
Skid steer, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
which we've done all.
right.
So,
Yeah, these are not must-haves. These are
Right.
things that if we
Yeah.
had them would be a
Right.
great
Wanna have
supplement.
a little
to the
bit of
program.
we want to have something to look at like that. Otherwise, what's the purpose of?
Exactly.
Right.
Are there any questions?
Is there a summary, Charlie?
Yeah, the front page, John, should be there's a little paragraph on each one. There are 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, but
And then the
total,
backup is on there.
but is there a summary of the total?
Yeah, it should be right on the front page. It's
Yeah,
about-
bottom.
That-
So it's 1,800, 800, and 2,800.
Okay,
But I didn't put it in the budget format because these are wish lists. as
Right.
Christine said.
Just the way we want.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Charlie? on the
Charlie, is
budget
there anything
item?
else in your budget other than the wish list that you want to point out?
No, no, actually.
It's a well-oiled machine.
You know what? There's nothing new, nothing different. We decided to go with 0 because frankly, we don't need anything. There was, as someone pointed out earlier, there was some savings over COVID, things that we weren't using that we now have. So those 1,000 folders,
Right.
we still have them. So there's no need to
Right,
order them
right.
again. We're in good shape and I'm confident that we don't need anything beyond it. However, some of the wish list items would be a good thing to have.
Right.
I'll put in
But
a
they-
plug for that.
And I say that only, like, let's just, for example, because one of my favorite things here, is like the art displays, right? That is just something that makes the school so happy and
Everybody sees
engaged. I love it, right? Like, I can't imagine that you have to come to us, I'm sorry, for like supplemental money for $800. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. We can't find $800 in the budget.
well, maybe it's not needed.
I don't know, is art displays?
Yeah, it's not, because
I think
we're,
they're kind of needed. Art displays are so wonderful for kids that are artists in the school. Same thing with math, though. They need, no, I just pointed that out because it
No,
was
I know.
$800. That's the only reason why I pointed it out. Like, is that wrong of me to say that?
No.
Yeah.
but it goes beyond what we would normally, in other words, the budget. Typically, my budget is pretty conservative, so it's what we need, what we get by with. If we're gonna go above and beyond that, that's what this list would be. This doesn't mean that in some year we can't decide to
Find
budget.
it.
Right.
somewhere.
Mhm.
But you don't need to buy something else that
I
you thought you
understand.
needed to buy.
Right,
Correct.
right. Yeah, I'm only pointing out that at least, I look forward to hearing what Ms. Smith says about like the tables and chairs have come up before, but that's like a $20,000 item versus $800 for an art display or some maps and, it's just a thought.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith,
We can give up a membership to like the Long Island Cauliflower Council. Hey, I'm serious. Yeah.
wait, I want to, just in all honesty, to all the principals, they did exactly what they were asked to do.
Well, I'm
And
not criticizing the
no,
principals, I'm
no,
telling us.
I want, but I think the public should also know, they did very exactly, and they were supposed to put it on a supplemental list, and that's exactly what it. Even the amount, you know.
It's what we, listen, this is why you have
They were
discussions
told
like
to ask.
Can I ask one other question before Charlie? What are we doing about field trips? Are there field trips back on full on this year?
Yeah, they are full on.
But we had the money from last year?
Pending, no, we have our money that was budgeted from, the 2021, 22. We're on, but it's just a matter of transportation. I mean, so there is such nuances, and it's Karen, I wish, you know.
Yeah, I know
They're doing a lot of, they'll do their walking trips. They're still going, you know, everybody's going on trips. Charlie's doing all of his stuff for the spring, everything to go. It's just a matter of transportation, because the bottom line is where we're going with programs and where we're going athletics is if Joe has buses, the teachers communicate, or who's the organizer of the trip, communicate with Joe Lapani, and then they're good to go. So absolutely, still
But it's
good to
still
go.
the bus driver shortage and things like that are still
Yeah, that's right.
impacting
Yeah,
out.
we-
They've been very,
Yeah.
very successful with a lot of the field trips this year. And, and at the beginning of the year, we asked, to try and keep everything after the John Marshall drop off and before the high school. So, I mean, Owls has worked out really well this year. I know Karen had just, squeaked out, but they've done quite a few that have happened within the school day. So it didn't take someone off the road for the other things in there.
Yes.
So, all things considered, it's worked out nicely that a lot of the field trips have gone on as planned this year.
Hi, everybody. Before I start, I just want to thank my coordinators for being here and also thank Isabel for all of her help with this process. This is the former English teacher who does not have a mathematical eye like you, so thank you. A few things I'll go through on the summary page just to explain, and then ask, I'm sure, or answer any of the multiple questions I'm sure you have on my wish list items. So for supervision, we did go up a bit there on our first summary page there. Most of that was because two things, the cost of goods and everything going up, particularly the cost of the tent for graduation went up about $7,000. So that explains that nearly $10,000 increase.
Right.
Our regular school likewise went up, mostly because of, again, the cost of things. Everything else, down to math, just about stayed the same. Our math budget went down significantly because last year there were purchases of textbooks and the accompanying resources. So that would explain that significant decrease. In science, we do this year have just a little over a $10,000 increase, or $11,200. And that can be chalked up to putting additional monies in our research program, because that enrollment has gone up extensively. That goes back to that presentation of our students in the beginning of the year, where I think we also mentioned that it's a good thing, a wonderful thing that our enrollment has gone up. And so we've decided to put more money into that to support that program. The rest down to communications is just about the same, but communications did indeed go up a little over $4,000. And that is because of our Bonic broadcasting program. So for next year, as I had mentioned to you a while ago, we are going to have that as a class, and which we're very excited about. To support that and to support the students' work, Mr. Quitco has asked for, I believe it's 3 camcorders or cameras to produce them. In guidance, we did go down a bit.
But one of the guidance items is on my wish list, which I'm happy to talk about, but that explains that slight decrease there. So that's our overall summary of the general budget. Other than that, it has pretty much stayed the same. We have a 0.7% increase. So those are the major variations within the budget.
I just ask one question, the PSAT
Yes.
has gone up from
Yep.
10 to 15.
Great
Is that,
question. And I'm sorry I didn't point that out. I skipped it.
is that a function of what we're being charged for the test or more students?
No,
or-
so we found that this year, the ninth grade, typically it's just the 10th and 11th grade who have taken PSAT. But we reached out to surrounding districts and surrounding districts' ninth graders do take it as well. So next year we signed our ninth grade up for it as well. And so then they'll have 3 years of practice before
Right.
the real deal in junior year. So that's a $5,000 increase
Right,
because it's 5,000 per grade.
right, okay.
Can I ask just, and maybe this is like a subject for like academic committee, which is spending a lot of time on it now.
I know what you're
But-
gonna ask.
Well, no, it's actually a question because a lot of our kids, you know, having a senior now and having two seniors I've been through, a lot of our kids end up taking, okay, I'll take off the table that they may abolish all. So many things, so many schools are going test optional. A lot of our kids actually end up going ACTs because they find that it ends up being more in line, it turns out, I'm told, with sort of our curriculum, ultimately what they take. I don't know, I'm not an expert, I've just heard that from people. So my question is, I guess I'm sort of questioning bringing the PSATs down to ninth grade and the actual value of that. Because
Because of being test optional.
a lot of people are going test optional, a lot of kids never even take, like the PSATs don't do much for you. All they really do is, it's a prep test, it stresses the kids out, and one kid may get a merit scholarship out of it, but they don't serve a lot of purpose other than a practice test, which we can give on our own without signing our kids up for the PSAT. So I
And
guess.
that would, the merit scholarship would be up to your junior year
That's your
one
junior
anyway,
year.
right?
So I guess,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to have the conversation a different way, but I actually question whether or not it's a good spending of your money. And I would sort of take that money, that $5,000, and I'd put it somewhere else. That's my own opinion.
Yeah,
as
no, and that's a
a,
fair point, and I appreciate that. Where we were coming from was sort of the equity, perspective, that some students can afford that test prep or those outside opportunities for it.
But ninth grade, like, my God, they haven't
We
even
used
learned half the
to,
math.
we used to give it tonight because we used
But
to
it
do
was
the.
used
Yeah, I thought my
We used to
kids
do the
did,
ACT, we also used to do, in the beginning, we used to do the ACT prep plan test in the ninth grade. We got rid of that, moved the PSAT to ninth grade, then we did 9, 10, and 11. We looked at the PS, and we then said, we had that conversation, and we were like, okay, let's move that out. Then we created a day for ninth graders that Karen used to kind of run, coordinate. The problem with doing that is it's a great idea. It's a lot of legwork into creating this day for social emotional well-being and whatnot. But it just became the coordination and legwork involved with it was just it didn't mesh with what was going on with the testing. The other pieces, the other option is you as a board, and we can discuss this and probably be academic, is to do away with the PSAT and put it on the weekend.
That's, which we would absolutely be open to.
And the problem with that is that everybody might not show up on a weekend.
Right.
Now, you did that, how many, what did we do?
We did
2
that
years
last
ago?
year with COVID, because we didn't want to all of a sudden gather everyone up for the PSATs. So we did a sign up, the school sponsored, the school paid for it. And I'm going to take a guess that in the last handful of years, non-COVID related, you'd have about 500 kids be forced to take the PSAT. And then when we did these test optional, come on a Saturday, we had about 70 show up.
Yeah.
And the difference there would be the cost becomes, on the Saturday, the difference is we have to pay the staff to come in on a Saturday during the day, so
Right.
I think,
But that could
I think I
offset
heard someone
the
say maybe
offset.
we should bring the, we could discuss this a little deeper at the academic for the merits of this, and that might, if it does go the other way, it might fill your Naviance wish list right then and
Yeah.
there, which I think you're gonna talk
Wait,
about
wait,
when we get to
I
it.
just,
Can
I
we
just
switch
one
to one
opinion, but.
ACT and one?
I just want
PSAT.
opinion, but I just, I
Jackie, it's a
really,
good point.
I really question the value of doing it, because I would say, in general, I think these standardized tests.
We've
are-
vacillated
are
on this
very,
for
very
years ago,
stressful.
like we did the PSAT for all 3 levels, then we did it for the 2
right.
levels, we went back and forth on this, and, you know, I mean, I think Sarah's point is, you know, some schools are doing this exclusively, some are not, I mean, but I think that's a great, you know, we'll bring it up and talk about it in
Yeah,
academic.
I just,
And that 5,000, if it does go the other way, for test optional, certainly is a factor with
yeah,
COVID.
I mean,
more
I guess
recent.
my experience has been if you take the PSAT too early, you haven't learned all the math on it,
Yeah.
it stresses you out. And you think, oh my God, I'm useless. And it's one more high stakes test for these kids. They have a
Right.
lot of them. And so I think there's other, you know,
So
we can have a
bring-
whole other conversation about testing.
Let's
but-
bring it up at academic, and then,
Yeah.
certainly when you
Yep.
sell your Naviance wish list, this may wash itself out brilliantly, so.
Right, exactly, and we're, you know, I'm absolutely open to the idea of looking at that and or offering it on a Saturday, you know, so I actually love that idea. I think it would be great. and be-
Opposed to offering it on a Saturday. I don't think it's
I think the
feasible, I think it's
Saturday
a waste of
thing,
money.
having
Yeah.
organized the SATs and PSATs in district for some
Yeah.
time, what happened last year was with the PSAT on Saturday, to your point, was
Right.
the equity there just, it disappears.
Yeah.
Because, and again, the test optional thing was even another factor last year, so no one knew what to do with the test with COVID, you know, going back to summer of 20 and so on and so forth. And, you know, I know I've talked to quite a few when I was still doing those essays. It was crazy. Everyone, did I have to take this test? There's no seats available. Do I not need to take this test? So I think the Saturday thing really
Right.
was funky, you know, as a, but let's.
I'm mostly
Yeah.
focusing on whether or not I think it's worth the extra money to have ninth graders take the test.
Agreed,
We can talk bigger
Agreed.
picture about testing policy. I'm happy to do that.
right.
As opposed to
I think
maybe
it's all- I
doing
think
it
it's all the same
sophomore year and
conversation. I
practice ACT and junior year practice PSAT,
Right.
right?
I mean, I think that if you surveyed, like, I know a ton of kids who didn't submit scores this year.
Mhm.
Like, I'd be really actually interested.
It's the juniors that really pre-qualified for the merit scholarship.
And
And the sophomores
right.
get a little exposure, and is that worth the exposure?
Right.
Is,
Right.
I'm full agreement with the conversation, you know.
Right.
And we could also, you know, offer practice tests that are printed out, sit in your room, take a test. You don't have to pay that.
And there are a lot
Well,
of
and the
things that we can
library, the
explore.
library
for-
offers
That's
them
stress.
like 4 or 5 times a year, the
Right.
library offers them for free, practice ACT and PSAT,
Right.
and practice SAT.
I'd rather like do that, set up a thing and pay a teacher to proctor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A
And in
Xerox
2 years,
exam.
all the SATs are gonna be digital anyway, so.
Right.
That's what they say.
So,
So,
what?
in 2 years, all the SAT exams are going to be digital.
Glad you brought that
There'll
up.
be no paper, so they say, so,
Yeah.
like this,
Right.
they like computer-based testing in New York State too.
Grateful to be done with that.
Isn't it?
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the items on the
Yes.
wish list?
Sure, yes, I do. So the first thing and the biggest ticket item there is are the tables for 2 science classrooms. And we put it on here as the full amount, knowing full well that it may be down to 1 classroom or 0 classroom, so we're open to this conversation. But do you mind if I ask Ms. McGuire to join me
No,
to
no.
explain about why we might want these tables in science?
Hi, everybody. In terms of the 2 science rooms, room 40 is used by Michael Galetta, and he is our ENL science teacher. And room 79 is used by Mr. Fox, and he teaches our inclusion living environment classes. Both of these classes are lacking in adequate surface space necessary to accommodate any type of group or lab work. If you were to go into the classrooms, you would see that like every 3 feet around the perimeter, there's a sink in both classrooms. So there's no ample workspace around the perimeter, and there's no large tables in either of these classrooms for the students to do any kind of real group or lab work. Trying to even do any kind of collaboration or get some group discussions going is a very difficult thing in both of these classrooms. We want to move towards a more student-centered environment versus the teacher-centered environment so that we can start implementing better the next generation science standards. And I really feel like reimagining these spaces would allow us to do so. the student experience will improve greatly. And I think the learning outcomes for all of the students involved will just be amazing. So I know that this is something that we put forth several years ago, and with COVID hitting, it was not able to, be followed through with. So, if we could possibly do 1 or 2 rooms instead of 3, whatever you could, if it's possible, we would greatly appreciate it, because I think
So
these
the 20,000 is for 3 classrooms?
20,000 is for 2.
is
2 classrooms, okay.
yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, it sounds like a very worthwhile thing.
Thank you.
And then our next item is the 3D thunder laser printer that our art department has requested. And Mr. Gregory came all this way to talk to us a bit about the thunder laser, so if you don't mind. And Ms. Evans, if you'd like to join the welcome. So that would be the $6,900 would be for the thunder laser. And we're not just asking for it because of the awesome name.
So the whole idea behind asking for the laser was to bring in some new technology, some new modern technology into the design classes. We use a lot of CAD software, computer-aided design software, and we've had the 3D printer in the past. One I asked for in a grant about 8-9 years ago, and the other one was donated from Bates Massey. And that allows us to do some 3D printing, additive manufacturing. So this is just one example of like what a product looks like. So by getting a laser cutter, it allow us to work with new materials, things from metals to woods to plastics, demonstrate subtractive manufacturing to the students, and really just sort of grow interest in the program. And it's something that I could see being used in other areas, not just my classroom. I could see it in Rigby's classroom with the woodworking. They can do a lot of engraving. Same with Urban with the robotics. He's talked about wanting one for, creating gears, those kinds of things. And then same even with the art department, from custom frames, those kinds of things. So I've seen one of these before. Hampton School has one. Here's what, $30,000. But it's one of those things that I would, is it gonna, allow me not run my class? No, but it would be something that I could really see to stimulate student interest and just, really bring some new technology into the course through the clubs and then the other courses that we offer here. Another note too, in a way, it could actually, I feel like, save the school some money, because this is just one example. I use this with the 3D printer. This was a little part. I worked with my brother in the maintenance department. So a little 2-cent part broke. I was able to redraw it using the CAD software, 3D print it, and that saved about $400 from replacing a like an actuator motor. So you can subtract that from the cost of the laser. Sorry, but so that's my pitch there. Any questions with the?
What was the cost?
6,900.
6,000?
900.
So can I ask a question related, speaking of 6,000? So we brought this up a bunch of times. It's now your turn to have us bring it up, which is the whole issue of the calculators and the missing calculators that go, we pay every year for pretty expensive calculators, and then there's a new request for another $6,600 in calculators, which would buy you a new printer.
Yeah.
So my question is that broken? Are the kids still walking off with them? What are we doing to hold that accountable? And it says missing calculators, and we've heard this every year, so I'm just repeating.
Yeah, so I sent out a letter when students don't return the calculators. We actually went back to classroom sets this year because with COVID, we lost an extraordinary amount. They left and then they came back. I sent letters out, we got 2 or 3 back, and then that's it. So, there's always that, oh, you're not going to graduate if you don't return your stuff, but we don't really hold kids to that with regards to like their diplomas or holding this or holding that. So they have, it's kind of an honest, either you return it, because nothing, truly happens if they don't return it at this point. So after COVID, I didn't have enough calculators to be comfortable. If we had a geometry reading for 260 kids that I could cover that. So we went back to the classroom set this year. It's either a policy change where we require kids to buy their own calculators, which we tried, or we go back to classroom sets, or we go back to signing them out. And either way, we end up losing probably around 60 calculators a year.
And each one costs how much?
125 right
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
I buy the
Yikes.
lower end model, and they're actually getting hard to come by because now most of them are the charging one.
I mean, I think we talked about finding them and sending invoices and things like that over the years. We've gone through, I mean, talking about over and over again how you do that, because we have the same thing with athletic uniforms.
I'm only
And
saying that if we're at a point right now, we should hold them accountable. If we're at a point where we're saying, all right, we can't do stuff and we have to buy $6,000 worth of new calculators, and you're saying that kids took home with them, then I just think that
It has to be done exactly like the Chromebooks have to be done.
which is what?
They have to be inventoried and distributed out.
They are.
You know?
They are.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. No, Chromebooks.
They're just not, we're not holding.
They're not valid. Why are, so they're valid, they're on valid. So we know exactly who doesn't return them. But I don't think we've done valid.
I mean,
Yes.
Did we did it this year or the last 2 years?
it was set up so they're just checked out of the library, like
Right.
a book.
But
So
even during
my
COVID,
Chromebook has to come back.
they
And
were.
But what happens if your Chromebook doesn't come back? Are we charging them, or are you just
That's-
calling them incessantly until they bring it back?
We can't charge them. So
Yeah.
you can't actually collect.
Right, and we've gone over and over this, right?
I hope to go to their houses and track them.
Right?
But you can't actually collect.
Right.
Because there's no, like, you can.
Follow
And
the
you weren't allowed to hold back your diploma.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about, what do you mean, if someone has school material and they don't return it, why can't
And
you
you
collect on it? That's the
You
question.
We did try.
You can't really collect them.
Why can't you?
Bill.
We held, it was before COVID, so 2019 graduation, 2018 graduation. We held them with books and everything, and we got a ton back. We wouldn't let them get their cap and gowns for that. So on the rehearsal day, they couldn't get their cap and gowns. Then COVID came. So, you know, different graduations, different kids weren't in, different things. And that's 2 years of that. So now we're here today with Patty.
Right.
And we're in this situation again. But when they go to get their caps and gowns, they cannot get their caps and gowns. Now, I'm not speaking of kids who lose calculators at younger ages, but you know, who are currently not graduates. So if Johnny loses it as a 10th grader, 2 years later, we are going to get something back, either a check or the calculator back. Oh, I got to run home and get it. But that doesn't leave her with those calculators for those that interim years of, she does not have those calculators.
Right.
And even
You
when, like, okay, so the policy is they have to return, like, if they lose one, they're supposed to return one in a package. So that, you know, it's not over from anywhere or whatever. So when, I never received one of those. A few honest parents have written a check for it, but that check goes back to the school, I don't get the output for that.
Right. But who's actually making the phone call to say, you know, your student has not returned a $125 calculator?
She sent letters home.
So you're sending out.
I send the letters home, I send emails, I do call.
Okay.
I would be lying if I said I called every COVID person last
Right.
year, if that was a version number, but I did send letters.
Patty, can the software be used on a Chromebook? Can they not have calculators and have just
We
a
did
Chromebook?
that last year. See, remember, it was not last year that the COVID hit, it was the year before, and that's when we lost all the calculators. So the following year, they did have it on the Chromebook, and TI didn't charge us for that. But now that the pandemic's kind of seen its thing, this year, they charged for that software, and
Is it better
You
to
also
have
need
it
it for
on a
like
Chromebook?
tests too.
But then you.
You can't use your
calculate.
Chromebook in an SAT or an ACT, you need that calculator,
like
right?
the actual
Right.
calculator in their hand, which I do understand. And also if you're giving a test and if you have a Chromebook open, it's
Yeah.
hard to monitor what you're giving them.
Right. But I don't feel like we got anywhere. I feel like they should be held accountable. We have to somehow do that so that we get the property back. We have to like make some sort of policy or something.
Well, this year I didn't sign any out. I abandoned ship.
So you just have them use them in the classroom?
Yes.
And then how do they do their homework?
They can look one up online. There's $5 on a phone now. You can get one.
So maybe that's what we do from now on. And, you know, you're gonna have to buy one at home if you need one at home, or you're gonna have to use.
So you're just bringing, if with that, with what you're doing then, so you're replenishing your supply, and if you keep what you're doing now, obviously loss.
That number should go down. The loss,
Okay.
we'll always need to buy calculators. I mean,
Yeah, they break.
the cost
Yeah,
is
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
go up because I'm finding it hard to find the yellow ones now because they're still old fashioned battery. And now most of them are the
Lithium.
charging kind and they're a little more expensive. But I think right now with the yellow ones we have, we need to just stick with that.
Okay.
We're just trying to find you
That's
$6,000.
Right?
And your
Good work.
printer big.
Any other questions on our wish list item?
Well, the Naviance training.
Yeah, so the last thing is the Naviance, which was the actual program, I believe, was purchased last year. So what the guidance department is asking for this year is training on that. And, you know, if you're not familiar, Naviance is how we interface with colleges, that we put transcripts up. That's how students apply online. That's how AP scores are uploaded and sent to schools.
Is it a new version? Is that why we upgraded, or?
It is a new version, and I don't believe there was training for each of our counselors when we first purchased it, unless I'm wrong about that.
It's become a great program that's just evolved. So, you know, even like the SATs and the ACTs, there used to be literally a CD would be sent with the results. We don't get those anymore. Now they're all digital. So there's just a bunch of back end stuff that is just, you know,
It's a
cloud-
bear of a
there's
program
cloud
too.
stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
it's a
they just
bear.
need a refresher on it.
It is a
And-
complicated program.
Yeah.
The last person who was trained was Miss Tovar when she was in that office.
And actually, the
Yeah.
inventory, there's an inventory on it that could actually be part of the 9th grade program we could talk about.
Mhm.
That was what we were looking at, I think, a year and a half ago, that instead of a PSAT, there's a lot of career inventory testing. So
And
How many-
interest surveys and things like that.
How many people does this train?
So that would be for our whole
it's a
guidance.
session, it's whoever wants to go.
Oh,
Yeah.
this one's, okay.
We budgeted
So it's
this,
just
I think, 3 years ago.
So
and then it didn't happen.
So it's not something that we could send to
They
people
come to
and have
us
them
usually.
turnkey?
They come to
Easy
us.
send
and
a
here.
trainer,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I have no specific questions, but I would like to say this. This is about this time of year, we close the books, right? We don't allow new purchases.
December 31st.
When is it?
December 31st, we tried to frost
Yeah.
it through the budget.
And, you know, there's a lot of money that was budgeted that was not being spent, right? When we
No,
closed
not
the
this
books.
year.
Not this year.
Not this year,
Not
she's
this year.
scrambling.
So
She's
she
scrambling.
closed, John, she closed everything. We closed everything December 31st. So what we're doing now, and I know what you're getting at
Yeah.
with purchases, but there's a lot of other things that have been purchased, and we're trying to, what we're trying to do is wait and wait and wait is the latest point because of, costs come up. The boilers came up.
Right.
The fuel costs come
Right.
up.
And fuel costs are gonna be the next
Rentals,
few
we might
months,
need to rent
Yeah,
the
I know.
porta potties out front for the
Every
bus.
board meeting, though, Adam, this is my point. Every board meeting, the end of the list is budget transfers.
Yes.
And one of the statements said that this money's going to be here, but it's not increasing our budget.
Right.
It's not an
Nope.
extraordinary expense.
Absolutely not.
All right, so I'm saying that in each building, in each district, we have some wish list here.
Yes.
That one of the first places you look is within yourself. Can another department who didn't spend it last year cut their budget and find money that way? Instead of us adding to the budget. So I'm sure you do
Talk about
that.
the sweep, the money from the sweep at the end? Is that
Before,
what you mean?
right before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
She's saying this year
Right.
is different.
we're being very,
So these
very
good-
cautious.
my point is these good items that really make a lot of sense to buy, we can buy it if we don't buy stuff we don't need. And there is money in the budget every year that they really didn't need. They thought they might need it, but they didn't.
But this year,
Not this
is the
year is the
first
same,
year.
this year is different, John.
I know it's different,
One.
but it's
one
not zero.
option-
And I bet, if we looked at closing the books, you'd have maybe $100,000. I don't know what the number is, but I bet you would. It may not be as big as last year, but it's there. And that's not the only answer, but it's a place to look. That's my point.
But yes, what we want to do is we'd like to always ideally do that, but we also want to fund, it's very prudent budgeting, is to put money in some of our reserves. I don't think we're going to have an exorbitant amount to put in certain reserves this year. And I'm not talking about exponential amounts of money. We are very tight and we still want to put in, correct me if I'm
You
wrong.
have a new proposition in the budget with the repair and maintenance reserve coming that, it would be good to put some money in there just in case that you have another situation like this one. In the elementary school with the fuel problem or something else.
How much did we say we were gonna put in there?
I don't know
I think
yet.
you're upwards, I think you can max it at 5 million, but you can, what was the minimum? I
We
forgot.
said $1 million.
No,
Yeah,
I understand that, but
So you
what
think
I'm
we need
saying
that
is,
much?
I'm just following up on John's point. So, like, from that, but that's capital, that's not coming out of this. Money that we're putting in the reserves, you're talking about that for the 2022-2023 budget?
Yeah,
This year, 21, 22, at the end of the year,
You're proposing taking some of the sweep and putting it into the reserve.
if we are above the 4% allowed by the controller's office, then whatever is in excess of that, then we, with the approval of the board, then we're gonna put the
Right, but my
money.
question about
Their
that
funds
is,
are depleted
can
a
you,
little bit.
is that, I don't know how much of that above would be
We don't know
capital
yet.
or that or
We
what.
don't know yet.
But I think John's point was, as opposed to putting that in the reserve
Yeah, I
per se,
understand. I
we could do
understand.
this.
Yeah, but if they wanna do that, that's fine. If you, Adam is looking from the point of view to put money in the reserve for we need it. I understand what John is saying, that I'm sure that we can find $100,000 in cover of this. I agree, we can. But I cannot tell you today, now in this moment, that we might not have to use some fund balance. At the end, you're not gonna have money ni for this or the reserve.
Right.
So if we have to get closer to the end of the year, every first budget of the month, you do have a fund balance that it comes to you available.
Right.
Okay, so at this point, it looks like there's gonna be $1 million, but I cannot tell you it's gonna be there because I do not know exactly what's going on.
And next year might be the year that we would have to take some from the fund balance depending on the
Yeah,
fuel
depends,
costs. So you do
yeah.
not want those lower than normal.
No, look, I'm
Yeah.
all for keeping a high fund balance, I guess, but back to John's point, I would only say that we survived, I've been on the school board, 12 years. We've survived the whole time without a maintenance reserve fund.
Yes, we did.
So
We did.
it's not like all of a sudden, like, oh my God,
No,
we
but
haven't funded the maintenance reserve
we
fund.
have never had a budget like that one either. Now you go to the appropriation and I'm having a hard time. Where am I gonna get the money from? I have never seen so many zeros in the balance part of it.
Right.
Okay, I have never had an appropriation as clean as this one. And the truth is that, for instance, substitute code.
Right.
This code is already negative.
Right.
I gotta provide the money because this is payroll you gotta pay.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
I have, there is maybe 40 or 50 in the custodial, poof, this is blown out of the water in no
Right.
time.
Yeah.
So those are the things
Well,
that
extra
we have to
cleaning.
cover first,
Right,
because we do have an obligation to the employees.
absolutely.
Medical, I think we have it covered. But, sometimes you get to the end and you're like, oh my God, we still need $10,000 more. You know what I mean? It's
And medical
such-
has a huge increase coming up.
And right now, everything is going up.
Right.
Everything is going up, that we're still purchasing this year
Yeah,
is going up.
right,
Let
And we
me,
budgeted
right. We have a few more months to go, right?
differently.
I'll end by saying that what John and Jackie We do that. We did it last year. If we have the funds when we're making those decisions towards the end of the year, we did it last year with textbooks that we were able to get, and thank God, because we were able to leave bond budget this year from the 2021 budget, we were able to use that leftover money, which helped us this way. But we do that all the time. I mean, Tim and I have already talked about things we'd like to take care of. Tim has big purchases we talked about last time in his budget, that if we're able to purchase parts of that this year with some of the leftover money, instead of putting it into the reserves, we'd love to do that because they're such large purchases. But again, not at the expense of putting us in jeopardy going forward. But I've never seen her listen, I usually beg Isabel and she usually relents over the last 10 years.
Well, the last 2 years have been totally unpredictable.
$400,000 off, and then it's come back mostly around. So, I mean, I know I asked Isabel to get ahead of some textbooks. She said no. So then I asked Adam to ask Isabel. She still said no. So then she showed it to us a bunch of times. She waved her finger politely at us. And, I think what John and Jackie are saying is, yes, when we get to like the May, when things are really kind of cleaned up, and she did a tremendous job with the electric, because, when she came on, I mean, I think she was going to walk out the door when she got the electric bill. And then she worked with, and then it's handed over to Sam to say, the solar was basically sending the energy, charging us for the solar instead of giving us the solar. And so that's, second week when she was back, she was much lighter, like, okay, so.
Trying to deal with that bureaucratic nightmare.
Get ahead of those.
Okay, all right. I think you're good.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for coming.
Thank you.
No, it's okay. You can go. I'll be by myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Lucky, I didn't remember.
Yeah, that was in the box. Today, maybe.
Oh, you know what? I didn't pick up today though.
You, everybody? Clear the list.
No support.
My budget is up a little bit, at 3.64%. If you look at it, my contractual part of that budget is $21,000 of the 39 that it's going up. And I was thinking about exactly what Jackie had said, why prices are going up. If, an example is, if we go to baseballs, on the baseball sheet, last year it was $74 a case, and now it's $94 a case.
Wow, yeah.
Things have just jumped, and these are all BOCES prices. And when I got my quotes before I put my budget together, we noticed this increase. So even though I'm buying the same amount of practice baseballs, which were $39 a case, they're now $84 a case. So that's a $10 foul ball, is what it is, in the woods.
Well, we gotta go over to that.
Yeah, we
those
gotta-
houses over
Yeah.
there, right?
So,
They come around with all those people over there, all right, yeah, well.
so if you look at my materials,
That's a really an amazing statement, Joe, by the way.
yeah,
A $10 foul ball.
it's a $10 foul ball, because that's, is exactly, and I have no way to recover that, and anything goes over the fence. So, you'll see that throughout my budget, that the same item that I bought last year is up significantly. And that's where my $18,000 material supply increase is. It's not that I'm buying more things. It's a much more accurate budget, because I did get quotes from BOCES before I put the budget in. It's not a guesstimate. I am finding this year, as Isabel mentioned, that we make a PO and then we get an invoice back, and there's not enough money on the PO because the materials have increased. So we have shifted money to cover that this year. I'm hoping that doesn't happen here, but that's where my increases are. $21,000 of it is contractual. I have no control. Coach's salary, Section 11 dues, and then the rest of it is materials and supplies. Can I pull things out? Yes, there are some things in my equipment code in athletics that we put money in last year we put $10,000 in the fitness center.
Right, do we need another 10,000? That's
That's so
really
funny, I
nice.
just circled
Right.
$10,000 fitness center.
So that could be repurposed, that could be taken
And
out.
wrestling
That-
mats,
We
do we
have
have to get those every year?
I recommend,
Wrestling mats, 18,000.
Well, I'll
we didn't buy them this year, so we repurposed that money this year to get other things. If we're going to move the resting room downstairs, those mats have to be in there.
Okay.
We didn't do it last year, so we repurposed it.
Okay.
So that's the conversation we'll have in our facilities, but it's there.
I'd recommend keeping the fitness center money because Joe, where it is, it's a placeholder.
Right.
It can be repurposed. Joe and I have talked about some programs he's piloting right now, in an effort to increase, the participation of some of our special education students. And we decided we were gonna change it over. I said, just leave it as that and we'll repurpose that money because that money really almost runs that whole program. So, I'd like to
You should
keep that.
actually talk about that program that you're talking about, the unified teams.
Yeah.
But then why don't we just move that into unified basketball coach?
We don't know necessarily. We want to see it run first. So it's gonna run now. It's starting, we got the coach, we'll get the coaches approved. I think she'll get it on the next.
Next board meeting, we have 2 coaches coming in,
Yeah.
and we're gonna fund a 3rd coach with grant money.
Yep.
It's not a coach, it's a helper. That program's gonna start in mid-April. It's very short, it's 3 days a week, and there's about 12 kids involved, and it's gonna be great. To have a.
The kids are great.
Yeah,
Kids are
terrific.
great, outstanding.
Yeah, I'm gonna share that with you guys. Once we appoint the coaches, I'll bring the welcome package so you can see what that is.
Great.
And it's terrific, and we're gonna do a presentation. Cindy's gonna actually do a presentation about it when we started with bringing the team in and that kind of stuff.
Oh, good.
So it'll be good.
Yeah.
So, but that, Adam is right, that money could be repurposed there. But that's where my increases are. The contractual, I can't do anything about. But, when you're pricing things out, it's significant. I mean, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's hard to determine like playoff expenses because you don't know how many teams are gonna make it.
And can I just ask, like, again, I don't like to pick apart
Sure.
line items and budgets, I'm just asking, like, so for example, because I know conversations we've had before with you are like whether or not uniforms should be replaced, whether or not we can put off sometimes, and I understand that there's a replacement schedule, so I guess 2 questions, and I was just looking through that, like, for example, do we need custom golf bags?
Okay, great point. And I was on here, I was gonna speak about that also.
Okay.
So when we had a donation for golf, it was back, let me just go to my page. real quick.
Okay.
So back in 2010, we had a donation of 15 golf bags.
Mhm.
That's 12 years ago, so they're kind of shoddy now. So we were trying to replace them. Do I have to replace them?
Right.
No.
I mean, that's kind of where I would say, recommend we not do that sort of thing, like uniform, like I remember when my daughter played tennis, I mean, we had more money in those days, like, they could have kept using their old uniforms, like, was it fine to get the new ones? Yes, but they weren't that bad, the other ones, so I would sort of say, let's look at some of the replacement things that, honestly, I'd rather give kids, I'd rather have science tables and let the kids have the collaborative than new golf bags, because those science tables are gonna serve
A lot
100
more
kids,
kids,
and golf
right.
bags are gonna
Yes,
serve 5 kids.
I
And
actually
they have
circled that because I knew you're gonna bring it up.
You did know that?
I
There you
did,
go.
it's right here.
Yeah.
That's why I had information, because that is something that, it's in my budget, it's something we've had. It's something that drove my number up, obviously, but it is not.
Would you be mad at me if I said, let's give it to the science?
No,
center
I
instead
would,
of keep-
I completely understand. There was a couple of years
Well,
ago.
this is one of the only budgets too that's also up that much. So I think if Joe, if you could find a few things that wouldn't kill you to part with.
Yep.
Maybe we can do that.
Yeah, I just think that the kids can go with uniforms that are not brand new, golf bags that are not brand new, and I'd rather see some of those go to some of the programs at the high school.
No, I mean, I think that was part of the cap audit that we dealt with when we hired the equipment manager.
Right.
One of the things we got cited on was the inventory and having a replacement schedule for uniforms. So I definitely think that's something that we could definitely look at.
I mean, we have that in
We told
place
them.
now. We have that in place, Adam. We are doing inventory.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, you're gonna have that report.
Yep.
And all of that's gonna go into final forms next year when we give out uniforms, because you could do an inventory right on there. So, yeah, there are things like that. But, a couple of years ago, we also didn't buy any more bags of sweats, remember? We took all of that out. So I haven't ever put that back in until this. And I circled it knowing that is probably should have been a wish list item, but it's I did put it in there.
Okay, well,
I think you would know better than anybody else
Yeah.
what items you don't feel that you have to have this year that you can put off a year.
You know, it is a little tight because we did really cut back last year. And I'm not saying I was bringing things back, but I did find a price increase on almost everything for athletics.
Look, we need as many, look, things, you're gonna need helmets. None of us wanna compromise like safety, or, and you need balls, and you need, you know, things. But the stuff that is like the bling piece of it, like, maybe we could extend a little bit longer, just until we get through this period.
Yep. There are 2 uniforms. We had JV boys soccer. We didn't get many things back during COVID. We put pieces together of stuff last year. So that's one set we do need. I don't have enough to get through there, so that's in there. But, you know, pretty much I can definitely go through this with Isabel and pull back a number. Perfect. Pull back some things, not a problem, but.
Yeah, whatever makes common sense that you can do without that. Because I don't really feel like I know, you know, what to prioritize. Right. You know.
Maybe Isabel and I can meet and go through that.
Yeah, that's true.
I think the oldest uniforms are maybe 2018.
2015. They usually have a
Before that, we
five-year,
had, yeah, where they used to.
5-year cycle.
Oh, I remember.
We have them on a
So we've
cycle,
done-
yeah.
We've done pretty good at replacing things.
Right.
But I do have a couple that are 2015. So, but,
Vintage.
yeah, vintage.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks,
Joe.
Thank you. Have a great night, folks.
Thank you.
I think we are.
Did anybody else need to say anything, or Isabel, do you have anything you want to say?
No,
or-
no.
They
The
on board?
next budget working session is gonna be the 22nd. We will be presenting the custodial, transportation, and
Hey, Joe.
the business office.
Look at this.
And I think that's.
That'll be all of them.
So that should be the last of it.
That is
right?
it. That went down from 4 to 3 meetings.
Okay, perfect.
That's what I.
Does anybody else on the board have anything, any comments, or?
John asked me about it, and I just explained
Okay.
exactly.
I just looked at golf balls.
Yeah.
The price of a golf ball last year was $32.99. This year, it's $71.99.
That's the truth.
Yeah,
It's the
right.
truth. I mean, look
Same
at the
golf
food
ball.
course. That was
Right.
just,
Right.
know what it is.
Yeah.
And
You
that,
don't know
those are
what the end of the
BOCES.
year is gonna bring.
Those are BOCES prices.
Right.
Yeah, that's where we got it.
Yeah, I think in closing, you know, for the first time in a long time, it's gonna be, you know, a little bit of a
Inflation's-
a rough road for this
Right.
budget and,
Inflation's
you
gonna be
know, for the next year. So, you know, we'll do our best and,
You know, I think it's very unfair for the state to impose 2% tax cap when we got 6% inflation.
right, I agree.
And not 4%, it's gonna go to 6,
Right.
and maybe more.
But the state's not imposing it, we're imposing it. We can
Yes.
do it.
But
But
they
we don't
should
wanna be
allow that
punished.
tax cap.
Our district would be punished if we didn't
No,
pass it.
I understand that. I mean, what's unfair is that they require, as opposed to like municipalities, if East Hampton Village or East Hampton Town want to go above the tax cap, all they have to do is raise their hands and go
Right.
above the tax cap. We go out to the voters. That's the
Right.
big, that's the
That's the
big,
work.
that's,
Right.
that's where the law
Right.
was screwed up, but we're still, I mean, look, I know we're all on the same page here. We're still elected to do what we need to do, and if we have to go above the
Right.
tax cap, then,
I think right now, yeah.
I'm not saying we should.
We've already
I'm just
voted
saying
not
we-
to,
We've
right?
already voted not to, but in the next couple of months, we
We'll see what
don't
the
know what's
community
going on. We don't know. I
Right.
mean, the way everything is going up.
Right,
So we don't even know what our fuel
No,
bill
I
is going to be in 2 months,
right,
I agree, I agree.
right.
especially if it stays cold, because it sure hasn't warmed up.
Right.
I just want to make one more point. I looked at this sheet, and if you look at the last page, next to last page, 16, you'll see that all these numbers are in here, right?
Yes.
Okay, so our tax rate is up 1 point, I'm sorry, I gotta find it somewhere now. I lost it.
1.23%,
Yeah,
1.21 or something like that. And this is estimate, Joe.
Well, the problem is in the last few weeks, so much in the world has changed that the numbers that we're looking at now are, could be
And
obsolete in
besides,
some ways.
this is I have said this many times. I mean, the board, East Hampton's board likes to know a tax rate, but this tax rate is completely estimated because from now until they get the final the final assessment,
Yeah,
and, it's
but
gonna
that's
change.
next fall.
It's, no, I think it's July that we get it here.
Mhm.
July or August, we get the final assessment number. And then in October, we
Right.
send the tax levy to the town. In December,
Right.
after, and within all that, there are in and outs of people who are, how do you say that?
Yeah, that tax rate.
Disputing the tax rates and so.
Yeah,
it's
the tax
very-
grievances.
Yes, it's very difficult for me to tell you that exactly gonna be that. Now,
Right.
considering that in East Hampton there is so much construction, our hope is that the assessment is gonna go up. This is up from the prior year, but there have been years that once we got this estimated, then it went down. So,
I don't think it'll go down this year.
there is a lot of construction, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's an estimate.
Right.
I cannot put it any other way. It's an estimate.
Right, can I have a motion to adjourn? Unless somebody else has anything.
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're getting somewhere.
Good night, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful night.